Shirtless and shoeless, but playing well.
How do you view your dad?
Tough love. Very, very tough love, or even if it is love.
John Daly once stared down a two-time U.S. Open champion and threatened to tear his body apart piece by piece. And here's the crazy part. He wasn't bluffing. This wasn't some heated trash talk that he regretted later. This was raw, uncontrolled fury from a newcomer who refused to bow down to golf's sacred traditions. And years later, when someone asked about that same player, Daly didn't back down. He doubled down, saying he'd tell him he despised him right in front of his family and anyone else who wanted to listen. But here's what makes this story completely insane. That confrontation wasn't just about one bad moment on a practice green. It was the explosion that launched one of golf's most chaotic, unpredictable, and unforgettable careers. And the relationships that defined John Daly's journey reveal exactly why he became the sport's most beloved and most despised rebel simultaneously. Let's begin with who John Daly was before the madness took over everything. Born April 28, 1966, Daly didn't slip quietly into professional golf. He burst through like a wrecking ball that nobody anticipated. His 1991 PGA Championship victory remains one of sport's greatest Cinderella stories. He was the ninth alternate, literally the final backup option, someone who had no business being there. But he walked away with the trophy like destiny had written his name on it. With his thunderous drives that made spectators gasp, his blue-collar swagger, and his complete rejection of golf's refined country club persona, Daly was unlike anyone the sport had seen. Then came his second major triumph, the 1995 Open Championship, cementing his place in golf history permanently. But that's just the highlight tape. The real story lies buried in a massive 456-page PGA Tour disciplinary record that documented Daly's complete chaos from 1991 to 2008. And what it revealed was absolutely shocking. The file contained 5 PGA Tour suspensions, 7 mandated counseling or rehabilitation orders, 21 warnings for inadequate effort, 11 citations for unprofessional conduct, 6 probation periods, and nearly $100,000 in penalties. His largest fine, a staggering $20,000, came after he launched golf balls over spectators' heads during a 1993 exhibition. The documentation didn't end there. It included him hitting a ball off a beer can that Kid Rock handed him, abandoning tournaments mid-round, missing tee times, and showing up at events shirtless and barefoot. Away from the courses, Daly openly confessed to losing between $55 to $57 million over 15 years through gambling addiction. And it all connects back to his early tour days, to that explosive confrontation that shaped everything. In 1991, during his rookie year at the Bell South Classic in Atlanta, Daly experienced a tense encounter that would establish the pattern for his entire relationship with golf's establishment. The practice green was overcrowded, just 6 holes for 146 players. As Daly worked on his putting, another player's ball kept rolling into his space. Being courteous, initially at least, he kept tapping it back repeatedly. But when he finally glanced up, he locked eyes with Curtis Strange, a 2-time U.S. Open champion. According to Daly, Strange told him directly, "You don't putt when a veteran is putting. You're a rookie. Move aside and let me practice." Most newcomers would have apologized and stepped away. That's golf protocol. But Daly wasn't like most rookies. He fired back immediately. "Really? Have you looked around? There's only 6 holes and about 50 players on this green." And that's when the situation went from tense to legendary. Daly looked at Strange and declared, "But fine, 2 things are going to happen. I'm a redneck from Arkansas and I'm going to keep putting at this hole. The second thing is I'm going to take your body and break it into 6 pieces so you'll never win a 3rd U.S. Open. So get out of my way." That moment revealed everything. Strange walked away, probably realizing he was dealing with someone who didn't respect the hierarchy or the unwritten rules that controlled professional golf. And that tension never faded. When golfer Lee Westwood asked Daly decades later which player he'd least want to travel with, Daly didn't hesitate. "That's the only golfer I've ever hated. Just completely. Hate him. I'd say it in front of his wife, his family, everybody." You could sense how deep that resentment still burned even after 30 years. This clash wasn't just about golf manners. It was class warfare happening on the greens. Strange represented golf's elite establishment. Daly represented the working-class outsider, and that's what makes this rivalry so legendary. It never disappeared because for Daly, Strange symbolized everything he'd been excluded from, the polished, privileged world that looked down on players like him. Daly's entire identity became built around being the outsider, and nowhere is that more obvious than in one of the strangest records in golf history. John Daly is the only golfer from the US or Europe to win 2 major championships and never be selected for the Ryder Cup, a 2-time major winner completely ignored. The snub reached its peak in 2006. Just 2 years earlier, Daly had been voted PGA Tour Comeback Player of the Year. Fans thought he might finally earn a Ryder Cup selection, but US captain Tom Lehman chose Stuart Sink and Scott Verplank instead, saying he wanted players who could control the ball and had solid short games. To Daly, it was a direct attack on his aggressive playing style. Daly didn't stay quiet. He called out Lehman by name, pointing out that Lehman's team got absolutely destroyed at the 2006 Ryder Cup. Europe dominated 18.5 to 9.5, one of the most crushing defeats in history. For Daly, that loss proved that the PGA establishment would rather lose with their safe choices than win with a wild card like him. While his war with the establishment was deeply personal, his relationship with Tiger Woods told a completely different story. It wasn't about hatred, it was about competing philosophies. That clash reached its peak at the 2019 PGA Championship when Daly, battling joint problems, received medical permission to use a golf cart. When reporters asked Tiger Woods for his thoughts, his response became infamous. As far as JD taking a cart, well, I walked with a broken leg. It was a sharp reminder of the Tiger mentality. Mental toughness above everything else. Tiger's comment wasn't really about transportation. To Woods, it represented giving up. But to Daly, it felt harsh and unfair. Daly later explained that Tiger didn't understand he was fighting diabetes, joint issues, and hip problems. But here's where things take a surprising turn. The two actually reconciled. Daly shared that Woods apologized to him over dinner at a PNC championship. Daly even revealed he was among the first to text Tiger after his devastating 2021 car crash. That moment showed what their relationship was really about: mutual respect between two men who represented completely different approaches to golf. Behind the golf headlines lay a personal life in complete chaos. Daly's marriage record reads like a disaster movie: 5 marriages, 4 divorces, and enough drama to fill a Hollywood screenplay. His first marriage to Dale Crafton in 1987 ended when he had no money and was struggling to make the tour. His second marriage to Betty Fulford was a nightmare from the start. She had lied about her age and was still married to someone else when they wed. The relationship exploded in violence, with Daly being charged with assault for allegedly throwing Betty into a wall. But the most shocking incident came during his third marriage to Paulette Dean. After a bad round of golf, Daly came home to find his wife waiting with a steak knife. She attacked him, leaving cuts and scrapes across his face. The next day, he showed up for his second round looking like he'd been in a street fight. Paulette later fled with their son and eventually served prison time on federal drug charges. His fourth marriage to Sherry Miller was equally turbulent, marked by public disputes and legal battles. Sherry was later jailed for interfering with visitation rights. Through it all, Daly fought for custody of his children, eventually winning custody of his son, Little John, in a Memphis courtroom. These weren't just relationship problems. They were wars that played out in public, adding more fuel to his reputation as golf's most unpredictable figure. If his marriages were disasters, his gambling addiction was complete destruction. Daly didn't just lose money, he incinerated it. His own estimates put his gambling losses between $55 to $57 million over 15 years. To put that in perspective, that's more money than most people see in multiple lifetimes, gone in casino sessions. The most shocking single loss came in October 2005, just after winning half that amount at a tournament. He lost $1.5 million in about 5 hours at a Las Vegas casino, most of it on a $5,000 slot machine. But even that wasn't his worst night. Reports claim he once gambled away $1.65 million in a single evening, with $600,000 disappearing in the first 30 minutes. Daly would sit at blackjack tables with $220,000 riding on a single hand. He'd bet $50,000 on football games but refused to bet on golf. The financial devastation was so complete that in 1999 he had to sell his Mercedes and his California house just to pay debts. The worst part wasn't the money, it was the mental trap. As Daly explained it, here's how my sick mind analyzed the situation. My sponsorship payments would be coming through in January, so I'd be able to pay everything off and get back to even by the beginning of the new year. Everything's fine. Everything's okay. That twisted logic kept feeding the addiction, turning every win into the next catastrophic loss. Daly's relationship with alcohol started terrifyingly early, around age 8 to 10, when drinking became a way to cope with an abusive alcoholic father. By the time he reached the PGA Tour, alcohol wasn't just a problem, it was controlling his life. From 1989 to 1993, he was hospitalized 4 times for alcohol poisoning. The most dramatic incident came in 1997 during the Players' Championship in Florida. After a bad round at TPC Sawgrass, Daly returned to his hotel and drank himself into unconsciousness. He was found near death from alcohol poisoning and rushed to the hospital. The PGA Tour immediately suspended him and demanded he enter the Betty Ford Center for treatment. But this wasn't his first trip to rehab. He'd been there before in 1992 and 1993. Each time, he'd emerge clean, only to relapse again. The alcohol affected everything. He'd show up to tournaments shaking from withdrawals, smoke cigarettes during rounds, and sometimes walk off courses mid-round when the cravings became too strong. Sponsors fled. Wilson dropped a $30 million deal in 1997 right after his Jacksonville drinking incident. When he wasn't drinking, he turned to binge eating, gaining massive amounts of weight that affected his game and health. The cycle of addiction was destroying not just his career, but his life. As if the addictions weren't enough, Daly's body began breaking down from years of abuse. In 2009, he underwent lap band surgery, losing over 100 pounds and dropping to 185 pounds by December. Initially, this improved his game. He finished second at the Italian Open, but some observers suggested the weight loss actually hurt his power game. In July 2019, Daly faced a near-death experience when he was bitten by a brown recluse spider while vacationing in England. The bite led to sepsis and required emergency surgery. For someone whose body was already compromised by years of drinking and poor lifestyle choices, it was a terrifying wake-up call. But the biggest health scare came in September 2020 when Daly announced he had battled bladder cancer. He underwent surgery to remove the cancer, but doctors warned of an 85% chance of relapse. The diagnosis forced him to confront his lifestyle choices, the smoking, drinking, and terrible diet that had defined his adult life. These health crises weren't just medical problems. They were the consequences of decades of self-destruction finally catching up with him. Each incident served as a reminder of how close he'd come to losing everything, including his life. Enter David Feherty, one of Daly's closest friends and one of the most interesting figures in his story. Their connection shows how Daly's chaos eventually became part of his appeal. It all started back in 1990 when a young, unknown Daly beat Feherty by just 1 stroke. After that victory, Daly invited Feherty to a party at his hotel. By the time Feherty arrived, he joked that Daly had probably already spent his entire winner's check. That story perfectly captures their friendship: chaotic, hilarious, and unforgettable. Feherty, a sharp-witted broadcaster with his own demons, became Daly's most loyal and understanding voice in the media. On his show, he could joke about Daly being a train wreck while still celebrating his raw talent. What made this friendship truly powerful was how Feherty helped reshape Daly's public image. That 456-page disciplinary file painted him as a walking controversy. But through Feherty's lens, Daly's impulsive behavior came across as part of his charm. Feherty didn't excuse Daly's flaws, but he gave them context. Both men had battled addiction and mental health struggles. Both were outsiders who didn't fit golf's buttoned-up culture, and that bond turned real chaos into something fans could root for. Beyond golf, Daly pursued an unlikely music career that perfectly captured his rebellious spirit. He recorded 2 albums, My Life in 2002 and I Only Know One Way in 2010. The first album featured collaborations with Willie Nelson and Johnny Lee, with songs that told his life story through country music. Some of the track titles perfectly captured his personality: Hit It Hard, Big John, Blue Collar Golfer, and the cleverly titled All My Exes Wear Rolexes. He even worked with Kid Rock, providing backing vocals for his 2007 track Half Your Age. But music was just one of Daly's business ventures. He launched Loudmouth Golf Apparel, a clothing line that matched his colorful personality. He had endorsement deals with Hooters restaurant chain, designed golf courses, and even launched his own pizza franchise in 2014. He also created a line of wines, capitalizing on his larger-than-life personality. These ventures showed a different side of Daly, the entrepreneur who understood his brand value. While his golf career was chaos, his business instincts were sharp. He knew fans loved his authenticity and rebellious spirit, and he monetized that appeal across multiple industries. The businesses also provided income streams when his golf earnings weren't enough to cover his gambling debts and alimony payments to multiple ex-wives. Daly's relationship with the PGA Tour was a constant battle that went far beyond normal player-organization tensions. His disciplinary file tells the story of a man who simply couldn't or wouldn't conform to professional golf's expectations. The suspensions weren't just for missing tournaments or showing up late. In 1993, he was suspended for walking off the course mid-round at the Kapalua International, throwing his scorecard at officials after shooting 77 at the Kemper Open, and simply quitting during the Southern Open without telling his playing partners. His most outrageous incidents became legend. He once hit a golf ball off a beer can handed to him by Kid Rock. He showed up to course openings shirtless and barefoot. During a 2008 interview at Murder Rock Golf Course in Missouri, he appeared on camera, shirtless, shoeless, with a cigarette dangling from his lips. The tour officials were constantly torn between disciplining him and capitalizing on his popularity. Daly sold tickets and drew television audiences, but he also embarrassed the sport's image. The $100,000 in fines and constant counseling orders showed how desperately they tried to control him. But Daly's rebellions weren't just random acts. They were statements against what he saw as golf's elitist culture. Every rule he broke was a middle finger to the establishment that had rejected him. Just when everyone thought Daly's competitive career was over, he surprised the golf world in 2016 by qualifying for the Champions Tour at age 50. Many expected more of the same chaos, but something interesting happened. Daly seemed to find a new lease on competitive life. On May 7, 2017, he captured his first Champions Tour victory at the Insperity Invitational, proving he could still compete at a high level. The victory was emotional for Daly, showing that beneath all the controversies, the pure love of competition still burned. The Champions Tour seemed like a better fit for Daly's personality. The atmosphere was more relaxed, the pressure less intense, and his fellow competitors were more understanding of his struggles. Many of them had their own battles with age, injuries, and changing priorities. But even on the Champions Tour, Daly remained Daly. He continued to use a cart due to his health issues, continued to smoke during rounds, and maintained his colorful personality. The difference was that now it seemed more like charm than controversy. His success on the senior tour also provided some financial stability, after years of gambling losses and expensive divorces had decimated his earnings from his prime years. In 2016, ESPN honored Daly with a 30 for 30 documentary titled Hit It Hard, cementing his place in sports folklore. The documentary didn't shy away from his controversies, but presented them as part of what made him uniquely compelling. Daly's impact on golf extends far beyond his two major championships. He changed what it meant to be a professional golfer, proving that success didn't require conformity to the sport's traditional image. His grip it and rip it philosophy influenced a generation of players who prioritized power over precision. He also opened golf to new audiences. Working-class fans who had never felt welcome at country clubs could relate to Daly's struggles with addiction, money problems, and relationship failures. He made golf more human, more accessible, and ultimately more interesting. His charitable work, often overlooked amid the controversies, included significant donations to organizations like the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. He regularly gave money to strangers and spent hours on charitable enterprises, showing the generous heart beneath the chaotic exterior. Even at 58, Daly remains one of golf's most fascinating and unpredictable figures, still competing occasionally and still capable of surprising everyone. John Daly didn't just play golf, he rewrote what it meant to be a legend. Wildly talented, yet deeply flawed. Fearless, yet vulnerable. Beloved by fans, but rejected by golf's elite. In the end, Daly's legacy isn't just about trophies. It's about the battles he fought, the people who doubted him, and the few who truly understood him. His story proves that sometimes the most broken people create the most beautiful chaos. That authenticity, even when it's ugly, resonates more than perfection ever could. And that threatening Curtis Strange on that practice green in 1991 wasn't just a moment of anger. It was a declaration of war against everything golf represented. That threat still echoes through every fairway he walks, every shot he hits, and every fan who cheers for the beautiful disaster that is John Daly. Because in a world of manufactured sports personalities, he remained utterly, completely, unforgettably real.